The year was 2387, and humanity had spread to the stars. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds, trading with alien species and living in peace. They were not warriors. They were farmers, scientists, and builders. The galaxy looked at them and saw a young species with no real power. The Valorian Dominion saw something else. They saw Prey. Captain Danny Brooks stood on the command deck of Defense Station Kepler, watching the stars through the main window. The station was small, barely enough to protect the agricultural colony on the planet below. 80,000 people lived down there, growing food and raising families. They had no idea what was coming. "Captain, I am picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Maria Santos from her communication station. Her voice was calm, but Danny had worked with her for 5 years. He could hear the worry underneath. "What is it?" he asked. Multiple signatures at the edge of the system. Hundreds of them. Danny felt his stomach drop. He walked to her station and looked at the screen. The dots were red, and there were so many of them that they looked like a swarm of insects. "Can you identify them?" he asked. Maria worked her controls for a moment. Then she looked up at him with fear in her eyes. "Valorian warships, Captain. One count, 204 vessels." Danny closed his eyes. The Valorians were conquerors. They had destroyed a dozen species in the past century, taking their worlds and using their people as slaves. Everyone in the galaxy knew to stay away from them. But the Valorians had decided to come to humanity instead. "Get me Governor Warren," Danny said. A minute later, the face of Lisa Warren appeared on the main screen. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been a diplomat before becoming governor, and she still believed that any problem could be solved with words. "Captain Brooks, what is happening?" she asked. "Governor, we have a Valorian fleet entering our system. Over 200 ships." Lisa's face went pale. "That is impossible. We have no quarrel with them. They do not need a quarrel, Governor. They just need to want what we have." Lisa took a deep breath. "I will try to contact them. Perhaps we can negotiate." Danny wanted to tell her it was useless, but he stayed quiet. She had to try. It was her nature. Governor Warren sent her message to the Valorian fleet. She spoke of peace and friendship. She offered trade and cooperation. She asked what humanity could do to avoid conflict. The response came 30 minutes later. It was a single sentence from the Valorian commander, Supreme General Vrex: "Surrender or be harvested." Lisa stared at the message for a long time. When she looked back at Danny, tears were forming in her eyes. "What do we do?" she whispered. Danny had been thinking about that question since the moment he saw those red dots. He had 3 patrol ships and 1 small station. Against 200 warships, he had no chance. His job was to protect 80,000 people, and he did not have the power to do it. But maybe someone else did. "Maria," he said, "I need you to prepare an emergency broadcast. Full power. Every frequency. I want this message to reach Earth and every human colony in the sector." Maria looked at him with wide eyes. "An SOS, Captain?" "Yes. That has never been done before. If we tell everyone we are under attack, it could cause panic across all of human space." Danny nodded. "I know. But if we stay quiet and die here, nobody will know until it is too late. At least this way, we give humanity a chance to respond." He walked to the center of the command deck and looked at his small crew. They were scared. He was scared too. But fear was not going to help anyone. "Listen to me," he said. "We cannot win this fight. Our job is not to win. Our job is to hold on long enough for help to arrive. Every hour we delay them is another hour for our people to escape and for reinforcements to come." A young officer raised his hand. "Captain, do you really think anyone will come? We are a small colony on the edge of human space. Why would they risk a war for us? Danny thought about the question. He thought about his father, who had served in the Earth Defense Force. He thought about the stories he had heard about human history, about all the times people had come together to help strangers in need. Because that is who we are, he said. Humans do not abandon their own. I have to believe that. He turned to Maria. Send the message. Maria's fingers moved across her controls. The station's communication array powered up to its maximum level. A signal shot out into space, carrying a simple message that would change everything. This is Defense Station Kepler to all human vessels and colonies. We are under attack by Valorian forces. 200 warships. 80,000 civilians at risk. We need help. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. The message flew through space at the speed of light, bouncing off relay stations and spreading across the stars. In a few hours, it would reach Earth. In a few more, it would reach every corner of human civilization. Danny watched the Valorian fleet getting closer on his screen. They were taking their time, moving slowly like predators who knew their prey could not escape. They were confident. They were arrogant. They had no idea what they had just started. Down on the planet, Dr. Kevin Price was in his medical center when the emergency alert sounded. He looked out his window at the night sky, where he could see the distant lights of the approaching fleet. God help us all, he whispered. But it would not be God who answered their call. It would be humanity. The signal traveled through space like a wave of fire. It passed through relay stations and communication networks, spreading faster than anyone thought possible. Within hours, it reached Mars. Within a day, it had touched every corner of human civilization. Admiral Chloe Adams was in a meeting on Mars when her aide rushed into the room. The young man was out of breath, and his face was white as paper. Admiral, you need to hear this, he said. Chloe excused herself and followed him to the communication center. There, she listened to the message from Kepler Station. The voice of Lieutenant Maria Santos filled the room, asking for help, begging for someone to come. Chloe had served in the fleet for 30 years. She had seen many things, but she had never heard a message like this. It was not just a military report. It was a cry from people who were about to die. How long ago was this sent? She asked. 6 hours, Admiral. Chloe did the math in her head. The Valorian fleet would reach the colony in less than 2 days. Even at maximum speed, her ships would take almost that long to get there. Get me a connection to Earth Command, she said, and start calling in every ship we have. On Luna, a retired Marine named Ben Harrison was loading cargo into his small transport ship. He was 52 years old and had not held a weapon in 10 years. He had seen enough war to last a lifetime, and he had promised himself he would never go back to it. Then he heard the message on his radio. He stopped working and listened. 80,000 civilians. 200 enemy ships. A small station trying to hold the line. Ben looked at his hands. They were rough and worn from years of honest work. He built a quiet life for himself. He had earned his peace, but somewhere out there, people were going to die unless someone helped them. He walked to the cockpit of his ship and started the engines. His cargo would have to wait. He had somewhere else to be. Across human space, the same scene played out thousands of times. Cargo ships changed course. Miners left their jobs. Retired soldiers dusted off their old uniforms. Nobody ordered them to go. Nobody forced them. They simply heard the call and decided to answer it. On Earth, the politicians argued. Some said the colony was too far away. Some said the risk was too great. Some said humanity should not start a war with the Valorian Dominion over one small world. Admiral Chloe Adams listened to them argue for 2 hours. Then she stood up and spoke. I did not come here to ask for permission, she said. I came here to inform you of my decision. The fleet is mobilizing. We are going to Kepler. If any of you want to stop me, you can try, but I would not recommend it." She walked out of the room before anyone could respond. Back at Kepler Station, Danny Brooks was doing everything he could to slow down the enemy. He ordered his 3 patrol ships to spread out and attack from different angles. They could not destroy the Valorian fleet, but they could make them cautious. The Valorians were not used to resistance. They expected their targets to surrender or run. Instead, these humans were fighting back with tiny ships that should have been destroyed in seconds. Supreme General Vrex watched the battle from his command ship. He was a tall creature with hard black armor covering his body and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. He had conquered many worlds and had never lost a single battle. "These creatures are foolish," he said to his officers. "They fight when they cannot win." "Perhaps they are hoping for rescue," one of his officers suggested. Vrex made a sound that might have been laughter. "From where?" "Their homeworld is far away. By the time any help arrives, this colony will be ours." He was watching the human patrol ships dance around his fleet when a communication officer approached him. "Supreme General, we have intercepted a transmission. The humans have sent a distress signal to their entire civilization." Rex tilted his head. "Interesting. So they are calling for help. Let them call. It will not matter." He turned back to watch the battle, confident in his victory. On the planet below, Governor Lisa Warren was organizing the evacuation of the colony's children. There were not enough ships to save everyone, so they had to make terrible choices. The young would go first. The old would stay behind. Dr. Kevin Price helped load children onto transports. Their parents stood nearby, trying to be brave, trying not to cry. Many of them would never see their children again. "Doctor," a young mother said to him, "will they come? Will someone save us?" Kevin looked at her. He wanted to lie, to tell her everything would be fine. But he respected her too much for that. "I do not know," he said, "but I believe in our people. If there is any way to reach us, they will find it." The woman nodded and kissed her daughter goodbye. Far away, the human fleet was gathering. Ships came from every direction, military and civilian alike. Admiral Adams watched them arrive, and for the first time in years, she felt something close to hope. "How many do we have?" she asked. 153 warships, Admiral, and over 400 civilian vessels carrying supplies and volunteers. Chloe Adams smiled. "Then let us go save our people." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, racing toward a distant colony where 80,000 humans were waiting for them. They would not wait in vain. The Valorian fleet arrived at Kepler like a storm of death. 200 warships surrounded the small defense station and began their attack. Danny Brooks watched them come and knew that this would be the hardest day of his life. "All hands, battle stations," he said through the intercom. "This is it. Hold the line as long as you can." The station shook as enemy weapons hit their shields. Warning lights flashed across every console. Maria Santos kept her eyes on her screens, tracking the enemy movements and looking for any weakness they could use. "Captain, our patrol ships are engaging," she reported. "The Frontier and the Sentinel are attacking the enemy's flank." Danny nodded. Those 2 ships had brave crews, but they were small and weak compared to the Valorian warships. They would not last long. The battle was brutal. The Frontier managed to destroy 3 enemy ships before a missile tore through its hull. Danny watched the small ship explode on his screen. 12 people died in that flash of light. He had known all of them. "Sentinel is down," Maria said a few minutes later. Her voice was shaking now. "Only the Guardian is left." The Guardian was their last patrol ship. Its captain, a young woman named Paula Grant, was fighting like a demon. She flew her ship through the enemy formation, firing at anything that moved, dodging attacks that should have killed her 10 times over. "Guardian, fall back to the station," Danny ordered. "You have done enough." "Negative, Captain." Paula's voice came through the radio. "If I fall back, they will focus all their fire on you. I can buy you more time out here." Danny wanted to order her to retreat, but he knew she was right. Every minute she kept fighting was another minute for the colony to evacuate, another minute for the relief fleet to get closer. "Good luck, Paula," he said. "You too, Captain. See you on the other side." The Guardian fought for another 20 minutes before a Valorian battleship caught her with a direct hit. The small ship broke apart, and Paula Grant joined the growing list of heroes who had given their lives for Kepler. Now, the station was alone. The Valorians pounded them with everything they had. Sections of the station went dark as power systems failed. Fires broke out in the lower levels. The crew fought to keep the station alive, but they were losing. Danny was on the command deck when an explosion threw him across the room. He hit the wall hard and felt something crack in his chest. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to stand. "Captain, you are hurt," Maria said, rushing to his side. "I am fine," he lied. "What is our status?" "Shields are down to 12%. We have lost half our weapons. Life support is failing on decks 3 through 7. Danny looked at the screen. The Valorian fleet was still out there, barely damaged. They had thrown everything at them and had only scratched the enemy. "How long until the relief fleet arrives?" he asked. Maria checked her console. 18 hours, Captain. 18 hours. They would be dead in 2. On the planet below, the situation was just as desperate. Valorian landing ships had touched down near the main settlement, and thousands of enemy soldiers were marching toward the colony. The colonists had nothing to fight with except farming tools and mining equipment, but they refused to surrender. A young man named Derek Flynn stood at the entrance of the colony school. Inside were 300 children who could not be evacuated in time. Derek was 24 years old and had never been in a fight in his life. But he had found an old hunting rifle, and he was not going to let anyone hurt those children. "You do not have to do this," the school's teacher told him. "You could hide with us." Derek shook his head. "Someone has to stand here. If even one of those things gets past me, those kids will die. I will not let that happen." He stood at the door and waited for the enemy to come. Dr. Kevin Price had turned the medical center into a fortress. He had gathered all the wounded and sick in one place, hoping that the Valorians would show mercy to a hospital. But he knew their reputation. He knew mercy was not something they understood. He was treating a wounded security officer when the ground shook. Through the window, he could see Valorian soldiers moving through the streets. They were tall and covered in black armor, and they carried weapons that could cut through steel like paper. "Doctor, what do we do?" a nurse asked him. Kevin looked at his patients. There were dozens of them, too sick or hurt to move. He could not save them all. He probably could not save any of them. "We stay," he said. "We do our jobs. If they want to kill us, they will have to do it while we are helping people." Up in space, Danny Brooks was still fighting. The station was falling apart around him, but he would not give up. He ordered his remaining crew to focus all power on the communication array. "Maria, send another message. Tell the fleet we are still here. Tell them to hurry." Maria sent the message. Then she looked at her screen and froze. "Captain," she whispered, "I am detecting new signatures at the edge of the system." Danny's heart stopped. More Valorians? Were they sending reinforcements? Then Maria looked at him with tears in her eyes. "They are human ships, Captain. Over 100 of them. And more are coming." Danny looked at the screen. He saw the blue dots appearing one after another, spreading across the edge of the system like stars being born. They had come, against all odds, against all reason, Humanity had answered the call. "Maria," Danny said, his voice breaking. "Tell them welcome to Kepler." The human fleet emerged from faster than light, travel like an army of angels. 153 warships, followed by hundreds of civilian vessels carrying supplies, weapons, and volunteers. Admiral Chloe Adams stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Constellation, and looked at the battlefield ahead. The Valorian fleet was surrounding the damaged station. The colony below was under attack. Fires were burning on the surface, visible even from space. "Open a channel to the Valorian commander," she ordered. A moment later, the face of Supreme General Rex appeared on her screen. He looked at her with eyes that showed no emotion, just cold hunger. "Human commander," he said, "you have come a long way to die." Chloe Adams did not blink. "I am giving you one chance to leave this system. Take it or face the consequences." Rex made that strange laughing sound again. "You have brought more ships than I expected, but you are still outnumbered. My fleet has destroyed countless enemies. Your little rescue force will not change anything." "We will see about that," Chloe said. Then she cut the connection and turned to her crew. "All ships, attack formation. Target their command vessels first. Show them what happens when you threaten human lives." The battle began. Human ships moved with a coordination that the Valorians had never seen. They worked together in perfect harmony, covering each other's weaknesses and combining their firepower against single targets. One by one, Valorian warships began to fall. On the Resolute, young Ensign Paul Carter was manning the weapons station when a Valorian torpedo streaked toward them. There was no time to dodge, no time to think. Paul acted on instinct, firing a burst of defensive weapons that intercepted the torpedo just seconds before impact. "Good shot, Ensign," his captain said. "Keep it up." Paul nodded, his hands shaking but his aim steady. He had trained for this his whole life, but nothing could prepare someone for real combat. People were dying around him. Ships were exploding. And yet, somehow, they were winning. Ben Harrison flew his cargo ship through the chaos of battle. He was not armed, but he had other ways to help. He maneuvered alongside the damaged Kepler station and began transferring supplies through an emergency airlock. "Captain Brooks," he said through the radio, "I have medical supplies and food. Permission to come aboard." Danny Brooks laughed, and it hurt his broken ribs. "Permission granted. And thank you. Who are you?" "Just an old Marine who could not stay retired." "Hold on, Captain. Help is here." On the surface, Commander Rachel Morris led a Marine assault force down from orbit. Dropships fell through the atmosphere like meteors, landing in the middle of the Valorian ground forces. Marines in heavy armor poured out, weapons blazing. "Push them back," Rachel ordered. "Protect the civilians at all costs." The Valorians had never faced human Marines before. They were used to fighting species that surrendered when the battle turned against them. These humans did not surrender. They fought harder when things got worse. They charged into danger instead of running from it. Chief Petty, Officer Lucas Grant, led his squad through the streets of the colony, clearing out enemy soldiers building by building. He was 60 years old and had scars from a dozen battles, but he moved like a man half his age. Contact left, one of his soldiers shouted. Lucas turned and fired, dropping a Valorian soldier before it could shoot. "Keep moving. We have civilians to save." They reached the school where Derek Flynn was still standing guard. The young man was wounded, blood running down his arm, but he had not moved from his post. Around him lay the bodies of 4 Valorian soldiers he had killed with his hunting rifle. "Son, you can stand down now," Lucas said. "The Marines are here." Derek looked at him with exhausted eyes. "The children? They are safe. You protected them." Derek nodded, then collapsed. Lucas caught him before he hit the ground and carried him to safety in space. The tide of battle had completely turned. The Valorian fleet was breaking apart, ships fleeing in every direction. Admiral Adams directed her forces to cut off their retreat, capturing or destroying any vessel that tried to escape. Supreme General Vrex watched his fleet crumble around him. For the first time in his life, he knew what it felt like to lose. These humans, these weak and primitive creatures, were destroying everything he had built. How? He demanded. How is this possible? They were supposed to be nothing. His officers had no answer. A human boarding party breached his flagship. Marines in black armor stormed through the corridors, overwhelming his guards with brutal efficiency. Vrex tried to fight, but a human soldier shot the weapon from his hands and forced him to his knees. Commander Rachel Morris walked up to him, her face hidden behind her helmet. Supreme General Vrex, you are now a prisoner of the United Earth Defense Force. The war is over. Vrex looked up at her. You cannot do this. I am Valorian. I have never been defeated. Rachel removed her helmet so he could see her face. She was smiling, but there was no kindness in it. There is a first time for everything. Across the battlefield, Valorian ships were surrendering one after another. The mighty fleet that had come to conquer Kepler was reduced to scrap metal and prisoners. Of 200 warships, only 40 managed to escape into deep space. On the Constellation, Admiral Adams received the reports from all sectors. Victory was complete. The colony was saved. Humanity had answered the call. She allowed herself one moment of relief. Then she got back to work. There was still much to do. The guns fell silent over Kepler. For the first time in 3 days, there was no sound of explosions, no screaming of weapons, no cries of the wounded. There was only peace. Admiral Chloe Adams walked through the corridors of the damaged Kepler station, stepping over debris and broken equipment. The station had taken terrible punishment, but it was still standing. Just like its crew. She found Captain Danny Brooks in the medical bay. He was lying on a bed with bandages wrapped around his chest. His face was pale and tired, but his eyes were alert. Admiral, he said, trying to sit up. Stay down, Captain, Chloe ordered. You have done enough. Is it really over? Chloe nodded. The Valorian fleet is destroyed. Their ground forces have surrendered. Your colony is safe. Danny closed his eyes and let out a long breath. How many did we lose? Too many. But far fewer than we would have lost without you. Your delaying actions saved thousands of lives, Captain. The fleet would not have arrived in time if you had not held the line. Danny thought about Paula Grant and the crew of the Guardian. He thought about the Frontier and the Sentinel. Good people, brave people, who would never go home. They deserve the credit, he said. Not me. They will get it, Chloe promised. So will you. On the planet below, the colonists were emerging from their shelters. The streets were damaged, buildings were burned, but the people were alive. Governor Lisa Warren walked among them, embracing survivors and comforting those who had lost loved ones. Dr. Kevin Price had worked for 40 hours without sleep, treating the wounded from both sides of the battle. He had saved humans and Valorians alike, because that was what doctors did. When a Marine asked him why he was helping the enemy, Kevin gave a simple answer. Because they are still living beings. Because someone, somewhere, might love them. And because we are better than they are. The Marine had no response to that. Derek Flynn woke up in a hospital bed with his arm in a sling. His mother was sitting beside him, holding his hand and crying. You stupid, brave boy, she said. You could have been killed. But I was not, Derek said. And the children are safe. That is what matters. A few days later, Admiral Adams visited him in the hospital. She brought a medal and an offer. The Academy would be honored to have you, she said. With your courage and spirit, you could be a great officer." Derek looked at the medal in his hands. It was heavy and shiny, a symbol of everything he had done. Then he looked out the window at the colony he had grown up in. "Thank you, Admiral," he said. "But my place is here. These people need help rebuilding their homes. I cannot leave them now." Chloe Adams smiled. "That is exactly the answer I expected from you. Your colony is lucky to have you." Across human space, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. People celebrated in the streets of Earth, on the domes of Mars, in the habitats of the asteroid belt. They had faced their first real test as a galactic civilization, and they had passed it. But not everyone was celebrating. The Galactic Council, a group of elder species who had ignored humanity for decades, suddenly became very interested in making contact. They sent ambassadors and diplomats, bearing gifts and asking for friendship. Admiral Adams met with them on Mars. They were tall and elegant. These elder aliens, with technology far beyond anything humans possessed. They spoke of cooperation and mutual benefit. "We have watched your response to the Valorian attack," one of them said. "It was impressive. We would like to propose an alliance." Chloe looked at them with cold eyes. "Where were you when Kepler was burning? Where was the Galactic Council when 80,000 of my people were about to be harvested?" The aliens shifted uncomfortably. "We did not think it was our concern." "Exactly. You did not care about us when we needed help. Now that we have proven ourselves, you want to be friends. Forgive me if I find that difficult to accept." The meeting ended without an agreement. The elder species left with a new understanding of humanity. These creatures were not the weak and primitive beings they had assumed. They were something else entirely. Supreme General Vrex was brought before a human court to face justice for his crimes. He expected to be executed. That was what the Valorians did to their defeated enemies. Instead, he was sentenced to imprisonment. The humans would not kill him. They would not torture him. They would simply keep him locked away where he could never hurt anyone again. Why? He asked Admiral Adams during her final visit to his cell. "Why show mercy? I would not have done the same for your people." Chloe looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Because we are not you. Because mercy is strength, not weakness. And because I want you to spend the rest of your life knowing that you were defeated by a species you thought was beneath you." Rex had no answer. 1 month later, the repaired Kepler station held a memorial ceremony for those who had died in the battle. The names of every soldier, every crew member, every civilian who had given their lives were read aloud under the stars. Captain Danny Brooks, now fully recovered, stood before the assembly and spoke. "We did not ask for this fight," he said. "We were peaceful people, living quiet lives, hurting no one. But when danger came, we stood together. We fought together. And we won together. That is who we are. That is who we will always be." He looked up at the stars, at the vast darkness where countless alien species were watching and wondering about humanity. "Let the galaxy know this," he continued. "We do not seek war. We do not want conquest. But if any species threatens human lives, if any force attacks our people, they will face all of us. Every ship, every soldier, every citizen. We will come for our own, no matter how far they are, no matter how great the odds." He paused and let his words sink in, "and we will never stop." In the silence that followed, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Somewhere out in the galaxy, other species heard the message. Some felt fear. Some felt respect. All of them understood that humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They had awakened something powerful, and it was only the beginning.